fathers received an amount of radiation in the 6 months prior to conception, and somehow that was statistically linked to the child developing leukemia. So you're talking about a genetic damage. You're talking about possibly some damage to the sperm being passed on, and then the child subsequently being born and developing leukemia. So you're talking about it's the exposure of the father. And it was a big shock.
Yeah, now there's your Down syndrome, cancer flag, yes. No, that's quite important.
The man who first confirmed the cluster of child leukemias around Sellafield was statistician John Urquhart.
1126.
We asked him to study Northern Eye's research into the health problems of the test veterans' children.
But obviously the Down syndrome is there.
He wanted to see if there were any similarities between what was happening to the Sellafield children and to those whose fathers were at the bomb tests. Such precise data on the veterans' children had never been available before.
This is the first survey of its type that's got so much detailed information about the families. It's particularly valuable because it's all on computer, and we can call up certain information and ask various interesting questions. And when we do that, we find that there is dramatic new information.
Our research was based on confidential medical records supplied by the British Nuclear Test Veterans Association. The tragic testimony in over 1,500 files gave Urquhart a unique chance to study the health of the veterans and their children.
The two main findings that we found was that there was a higher level of cancer in the people who had joined the association than you would expect. And the second and very important finding was that there was a very high proportion of families, 1 in 4, where the child was suffering from some kind of illness that could be linked to a genetic effect.
What do you think are the implications of these results?
So far, the results that we've got are very important for 3 reasons. One is because they are telling the families that there is probably a connection with the atomic explosions. Secondly, it has a very important bearing on science finding out more of what's going on. And thirdly, they actually confirm that the effects of radiation are far more far-reaching and more pervasive than we'd previously thought, and that is worrying.
We put a lot into our new Dolmio frozen meals. Freshly made egg pasta, succulent meat, chunky vegetables, cheddar and parmesan, and Dolmio sauce with 2 types of tomatoes and a unique blend of herbs and spices. There's delicious lasagna, irresistible cannelloni, and tempting ravioli. New Dolmio frozen meals. Put the Dolmio smile on your face.
At SCS this weekend, we'll give you an amazing 3 years interest-free credit. Yes, you can have a beautiful new suite in your home for Christmas. Spread the cost over 3 years and save with no interest charges.
Put your feet up and relax at SCS.
As the autumn leaves begin to fall, so do the prices in your North East Ford dealer's automotive sale. To clear the path for our new cars, prices are tumbling on our 1991 models, like a saving of £800 on this Orion Encore. Or this special edition Sierra Fresco with sunroof, at £500 less than the Laser. And these savings are before your own dealer's knockout prices and part exchanges, all from your North East Ford dealer.
Whatever your taste in music,
enjoy the great taste
of McDonald's delicious golden grace meals. And just one meal will get you £1 off.
LSD Tempo Record.
At Woolworths, walk to old McDonald's now.
Bright eyes, a healthy body, a glossy coat, vitality, and strong teeth show that Pal's carefully balanced recipes help your dog stay fit 5 ways. Pal, for for life.
There is only one chocolate that feels like silk. Flowing smoothly, melting slowly, lingering sumptuously. The experience is silk. The chocolate is galaxy.
When you've got kids under your feet and they want something quick to eat, just think McCain and save your day. 3 minutes here and you're awake. Quickety quick.
Microchips.
McCain made crinkle cut or straight. Great from the box or on a plate. Try them once and it'll be plain. 4 microchips make them McCain. Quickety quick.
Microchips.
McCain microchips. Real chips. Crickety quick.
It was a beautiful sight to watch. We had never witnessed anything like this in our lives. I mean, the first thing that runs through my mind was, why do they need such a terrible weapon like this? What they're trying to do, you know, are they trying to kill all mankind with it or what? We were naive young servicemen at the time who weren't given any idea of the danger, future dangers from radiation. In fact, I didn't know what radiation was about. I'm quite sure a lot of men who I served with who didn't know the consequences.
Mike Reed was one of thousands of British servicemen drafted in to take part in a series of nuclear bomb tests at Christmas Island in the late 1950s. The massive operation on the remote Pacific island involved men from the Army, Air Force and Royal Navy. It was a race against time. Britain was rushing to beat a possible worldwide ban on the testing of nuclear weapons in the atmosphere. In the space of only 10 months, 6 huge bombs were detonated. The Ministry of Defence has always said that those servicemen at risk from radiation were properly protected.
The protective clothing worn by people who work in the forward area is worthy of some detailed examination. First of all, we should notice the close weave of the cotton gabardine of which this suit is made. Next, there are the double cuffs and rows of press studs. The cap is normally worn with the peak at the back to prevent activity falling onto the short hairs at the back of the neck.
Those at risk were issued with rubber gloves and protective boots. They also wore film badges on the chest to measure their dose of radiation and carried other radiation monitoring devices.
And in addition, they must also carry a personal dosimeter.
The Ministry of Defence says that people at risk were given adequate protection.
I find that's ridiculous. And I mean that. I was there, I witnessed things. I've met a lot of people who's also told us instances of, for instance, going into the forward area near the test sites, retrieving cameras and equipment, no protective equipment on. Yet a few days later, scientists are there, fully equipped, taking samples of the cold sand in there. So these men went in 2 days before those scientists without any equipment. I know a bunch of men, 10 men, and there's only one alive now, who went into the forward area. It's rubbish. They know that they were negligent, or if it wasn't, they were as naive about it as us.
Arthur Johnson was senior nurse at the hospital on Christmas Island.
The first bomb, we really just stood outside in shorts and flip-flops. We didn't know what to expect at all. We did have the countdown on the tannoy, which told us when to cover our eyes. But really, we were told nothing other than that. And then when the explosion happened, it cracked the walls in the operating theatre and broke every bottle in the pharmacy.
How were the troops affected?
Well, quite a few, including myself, suffered from diarrhea, nausea, stomach problems, which of course were now linked with radiation or radiation sickness.
What did you think it was at the time?
Mainly the RAF food, fried food.
I spent some time going through some of the safety procedures, and it's quite clear that on paper there were quite elaborate procedures. The problem was they weren't followed. Whatever people in Whitehall thought when they wrote the pieces of paper, you go several thousand miles away, it was a completely different situation. For instance, decontamination of aircraft. Aircraft were used to fly through the clouds, collect radioactive samples. They were supposed to be decontaminated, one aircraft per isolated area, completely stripped down, the radioactivity removed. Because of the pressures, the rate of firing, you often had 2 or 3 aircraft on the patch at one time. They weren't stripped down, so people were working on contaminated stuff continuously. And from the evidence I've seen, they weren't told very much about the dangers of radiation. Because although in 1991 we have a very sophisticated understanding of what those dangers are, in the 1950s, when we knew a lot less, we still knew that radiation could cause cancer. We didn't know how much radiation could cause how much cancer, but we knew it caused cancer. And there was also evidence that it could cause genetic damage.
Well, I was about 3 months pregnant, and suddenly I wasn't. I just had this, it was like a piece of liver, a triangular piece of liver with a little round knob on one point. And that was a baby, so I've been, and I was only 19 at the time. And I thought that's what babies of 3 month pregnancy looked like. Then in 1956, a year and 8 months later, no, 57, sorry, our daughter was born. Now, she was born with what they call a hole in the stomach. And since then, she was being in hospital with her kidneys. She suffered from asthma. She's had a growth removed from her neck. She suffered Bell's palsy. She had a miscarriage with one of her children. And then in 1967, we lost our last baby. I was 6 months pregnant, and I was in hospital for some other illness. And I went to the toilet and my baby was born. And I was ill, naturally, and I said to the sister, can I see it before, you take it away, because naturally it was stillborn. And I looked at it, I said, well, what is it, a boy or a girl? And the sister looked. There was no genitals at all. All there was like a piece of creamy thread from the front of his bottom. And because he had the face and shape of my husband, we decided it was a boy. And that's the only way we could find out his sex. But I was too ill and too naive to ask why. How did that happen? I met my husband when he first landed back in England from Australia, from the nuclear bomb test. And my one proud boast was, oh, my boyfriend was at the first British nuclear test weapon. It was my claim to fame. And when I think of the years that we boasted about that claim to fame, and then look at us now.
Sheila's husband, Frank, went swimming in a contaminated lagoon only 2 hours after Britain exploded its first bomb at Montebello. He now suffers from crumbling bones, angina, stiffening of the spine and arthritis. He's had a testicle removed, the main artery from his heart replaced with plastic, and he's waiting for artificial knee joints. He also has Francois dystrophy, an extremely rare eye disease. Frank was told the cause was unknown, but he discovered what caused it while being examined by international eye specialists.
There was 200 of these so-called specialists, and there were 6 of us clamped in this room. And after about 100 of these people had gone through, they decided we'd best have a rest So they unhooked our heads out of these clamps, and I just happened to turn around like that. And on the wall behind me was a row of photographs. Photographs of my eyes about that big. And underneath this, it says Francois dystrophy caused through radiation. So I asked the sister in charge, I said, "Do you think I could have a copy of that?" She said, "You weren't supposed to see those," she said. And she locked me up again. I said, "Well, couldn't you get me a photocopy?" "It's more than my job's worth," she said. "You're not allowed that."
When you sort of stand back and look at all of this, about your own health problems and those of your children, what goes through your mind? What do you think about it?
Well, I couldn't honestly say in front of people what I think of them. But I'm very angry. I'm more angry that I have caused other people to suffer. Because it was obviously through me this happened. Everybody says that the veterans are looking for comments.